Is maintaining a riding mower any different to maintaining a push mower? Well, I would think so, but do you really know what you're getting yourself into when you get that used cheap rider home off the marketplace? I hope you do, because I'm here to tell you it's not as simple, easy, or as rewarding as it's cracked up to be. In fact, I might just be able to convince you to put that rider back on the market. In today's video, we're going to look at some of the riding mowers I've had on this channel, and the problem is that all of them were suffering from some sort of issue from starting to running issues, and most of them all stemmed from poor to no maintenance. Now, I've already made videos about these mowers, and if you want to see them, there should be links to them at the top of the screen or at the end of the video. And I'm just going to use the video as a background while I talk about the issues consumers have when trying to keep their riding mowers working the way they're supposed to. Now, it's no surprise that if you have more than half an acre of land, you'll need to use a riding mower, or if you're like me, you just don't want to push mow anymore. But most consumers never realize the kind of work they're in for when owning one of these. So is it really that tough to keep a riding mower in working condition? Not really, but it can go south very quickly, and once it does, that's when most will try to get rid of them. If you look through the online ads, it won't fail that you'll see a few riding mowers that look to be only a handful of years old, but they're being sold for only a fraction of their new price. But why is that? And it's not for the reason you're thinking of. So let's talk about the basics for engine maintenance. Do you know how many hours your engine has to be ran before you need to do an oil change? And if your engine was fortunate enough to come with an oil filter, how many hours before you have to change it? If you're not sure about the answers for the questions I just asked, maybe you should glance at the all-important owner's manual, either the hard copy or the one you can find online. The answers to these two important questions are in the manual, and it would be a good idea to memorize that information, but is that all you need to know? Nope, you're not even close. Of course, oil maintenance is only one small part that needs to be taken care of. Here's the next question for you. Do you know what kind of oil your engine wants? Is it 10W30, straight 30 weight, or are you supposed to use a non-detergent oil, or even one that's designed for air-cooled engines? Yet again, that information is located in your owner's manual, and it could be different from the other engines you've had before. Now, once you figure out what kind of oil you need to put in your engine, just make sure you check it often, otherwise you're going to get a surprise while using your mower. So here's the thing, I can't answer these questions for you, you'll have to figure them out for yourself, and that's because not all riding mowers are the same. Once you've done your oil change and possibly replaced the oil filter and made sure the oil is at the correct level, you can then add your gasoline to the tank and start it, right? Not just yet. First off, you need to figure out if your specific mower requires low, mid-grade, or even high-octane gasoline. Otherwise, you risk getting less performance out of it or maybe even damaging it. But what about ethanol content? Can your engine use gasoline with 10% ethanol? But what if you could only get 15% ethanol? If you don't know the answer to this one, you're asking for trouble. If you didn't know, ethanol can do some serious damage to the rubber and the plastic parts in the fuel system, which also includes the plastic tank. If you put fuel in your system that contains too much ethanol, you risk damaging every single part in your fuel system. In general, most systems can handle 10% ethanol, but don't think it's not damaging it, it's just doing it at a very slow rate. However, if you really care about your rider, I would only use 100% gasoline with no ethanol and a fuel stabilizer on top of that. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record, and hopefully you understand what I mean when I say that, but the information about how much ethanol your engine can handle is in your manual. So take a quick look, and you should be able to find out if yours can handle any amount of ethanol. Now, if you can only get ethanol fuel in your area, there's still hope because you can separate the ethanol from the gasoline by pouring dyed water into it, giving it a shake, and the ethanol will bind with the water, after which you can then siphon out the gasoline, leaving the water behind. Now, that's a very labor-intensive way to separate it, but there are easier ways to ensure that even when using ethanol gasoline, that it won't give you any issues later on. The easiest one is to use another fuel additive to keep the ethanol fuel from going bad during storage, and of course, using a fuel shutoff valve to isolate the carb from the rest of the fuel system and running it until the engine stops is probably the best way. Now, if you're not aware of it, gasoline does not last for a very long time. Yes, you can use 1-year-old gasoline in a mower, and if it's been stabilized, it can be even older than 1 year, but as gasoline ages, it will become a liability in the fuel system. So it only makes sense to empty the system of gasoline when not using it for a long time. Now, there are other issues that can come up, such as drying seals and gaskets, but that's for extremely long storage periods. Now, if you're using a specific method when storing your mower, either for short term or long term, and it's working great for you, then stay with it. But if you haven't found one that works, then I'd look in the manual and see what it recommends. Now, I do not have a definitive answer when it comes to storage practices, but if you get it wrong, you're going to have starting issues come springtime. So, to help ensure that you'll have an easy spring startup, a little preventative maintenance at the end of the season will help to ensure it. So everything I've mentioned up until this point is pretty much the same for a riding mower as a decent push mower. So when does it start to get different? Well, that happens right now. See, over time, the valve lash on these large overhead valve engines will eventually start to go out of tolerance. And when that happens, it can cause some serious issues. But wouldn't that happen with a smaller overhead valve engine too? Yes, but the difference is the larger engines have electric starters to turn them over, and when the valve lash goes out, it'll cause the starter to work even harder, and if it's bad enough, the engine won't start at all. Now, this is something you typically don't have to worry about when using a smaller push mower. That is, unless you have one with electric start. What sometimes happens is that you'll think the electric starter is bad and then you'll get it replaced, even though there's nothing wrong with it. So is the valve lash the only extra issue you have to worry about with a riding mower? Nope, there's a lot more. Don't forget what powers the starter, the battery. Now, if you've been driving for more than a decade, you'll already know what I'm about to say. Batteries for your car or your riding mower only last for a few years, and if you're lucky, it'll last for several years. The only difference is that you use your car more often than your rider, especially in the winter. The reason is batteries do not like to be connected to an idle machine. If you've ever gone on a long vacation and left your car at the airport, you might know the kind of starting problems I'm talking about. So unless you want to start your riding mower once a month during the winter months, I consider disconnecting the battery from the mower and then taking it inside where it's warmer. Don't worry, if you've already switched over to battery electric equipment, you should already know this. And if you don't, I think you might want to glance over your owner's manual again. And if you want to keep that battery in good condition, I consider getting a battery maintainer. Otherwise, keep it off the charger. If not, you could boil away the liquid after a long time of storage. There is one more issue that you'll need to watch out for besides the battery, which is the charging system for your mower. If for some reason you had to replace your dead battery and the next time you try to use it you find your battery is once again dead, then you might have a weak or dead charging system, which of course is typically something you don't have to worry about on a push mower. If that is the case, you'll have to find out why it's not charging and then replace the parts to get it working again. Now, is there a way to keep this from happening? Unfortunately, I don't recall any sort of precautions for this issue written in the manual. It just sometimes happens. Another item you'll have to watch out for is a bad fuel pump. Now, depending upon what type of mower you get, your fuel tank might be in the back of the mower. If that's the case, it means your mower is going to have a fuel pump on it that's either driven by crankcase pulses or by the camshaft. This is, of course, something most push mowers do not have, and yet another item you have to watch out for to fail on some riding mowers. And as for ways to prevent it, unfortunately, I don't know of a way to do that. So we've pretty much gone over the engine, the fuel system, and part of the electrical system, but there are a few more items we need to watch out for. Now, depending upon what type of mower you get, you might have several safety switches that allow certain functions to happen on your mower, and if these fail, you're in for a world of hurt. You'll end up spending hours trying to find out which of the switches has failed, then you'll have to decide if you're going to replace one or maybe all of them, and if need be, maybe even bypass them, which is something I do not recommend doing. Now, this issue alone has driven some owners to put their riders up for sale. That way they don't have to deal with them and let the next poor soul figure it out. It's unfortunate but true. Now, at this point, we started to get into issues that have now strayed away from your typical push mower, but we've only scratched the surface. We still haven't mentioned the drive and deck belts, spindles and idler pulleys, tension springs, grease points, wheels and tires, transmission issues, and steering issues. Now, I'm not saying these items are not as important as the engine and fuel system, but it's something to consider. If you're not prepared to deal with them, I consider a different option. But what other options am I talking about then? Well, it's not the most ideal, but it's a start. I consider either getting a lawn mowing company to mow your yard every other time you mow, or if that's not in your budget, try getting a neighborhood kid to mow it every other time you mow. Now, this might be enough to not require you to get a riding mower. Now, there might be some of you who are recommending getting a zero turn instead because they might be built to a higher quality, and even if that were true, all the maintenance issues would still eventually come into play. The other option is to get the rider, but whenever it starts to have issues, just take it to the shop. And if you do that, well, get ready to hold on to your wallet because depending upon what the issue was or issues are, it's not going to be cheap to fix, mainly due to labor costs. I know getting 1 to 5 acres of land sounds good, but once you have to take care of it, the appeal goes away very quickly. Now, someone might say just to go ahead and get some sheep or goats, but that's a whole different set of issues I'm not going to get into. The fact is, after getting a riding mower, it isn't that tough to keep it in good working order. It's just that there's a lot to look over and watch out for. That's the biggest reason why some have been abandoned in a barn or in a field and left for dead, and then at some point, someone has the bright idea to try and make a few bucks off them by selling their problems off to someone else. So my advice is, if you're looking for a rider and you find one with issues, and if the price is too high, lowball them and see if they'll take it. Now, I know that sounds mean, but it's done for a reason. A riding mower that needs belts, has steering issues, and the engine does not start and run could end up with a repair bill of several $100s. And if that mower is more than a handful of years old, it simply isn't worth buying it for several $100s. And they're basically just trying to dump their problems onto someone else who thinks they're getting a great deal. In that case, I'd offer a much lower price, and if they take it, you'll be doing them a huge favor. Now, there's a really good chance they're not going to agree with your offer, which is just fine. It just means their problem is still their problem, and you get to walk away from a major headache. To be honest, most of the riders I've ever gotten have needed some kind of work to get them functional again, but the worst part is that a few years later, they'll all need some kind of major work done to them. Either they'll need tires, belts, blades, or worse yet, develop a mowing deck issue that's going to cost a lot of money to fix. So in a lot of ways, getting a riding mower is simply not worth it for most consumers. So who is it for then? Well, by the looks of it, it's mostly catering to those who have a lot of disposable income who still enjoy taking care of their own yard, or to those who can take care of them themselves without needing a repair shop. And unfortunately, if you don't fall into one of those two categories, you're out of luck. Now, does that mean if you find a great deal or even a free riding mower that you should just pass on it? Not at all. I would tell you to jump on it and try it out for yourself. That way you can find out if owning one is right for you and you didn't have to spend thousands of dollars to figure it out. That also means you'll have extra money that you didn't spend to get the rider to fix it up or to get someone to help you to get it going again. In fact, I have a personal friend who I've known for over 2 decades who has a rider despite the fact that their city lot simply doesn't need one. However, they enjoy using it, and since their lot is very small, the mower simply isn't ran all that long. That means the repair cycle is very long, meaning the next time they might need a major repair, it may take years versus if their lot was a lot bigger, requiring the mower to run for a lot longer for each mow. Simply put, I wouldn't get a rider unless you could take care of it, and if not, then keep doing what you're doing or come up with a different plan. So my question is, after realizing just how much work you have to do to keep a riding mower in working condition, would you still get one? To be honest, even though I can do the work, I'd probably say no. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.